The Seahawks win the Battle of the Birds. 20-17 the final over the Eagles. So Seattle improves to 7-7, which is the degree of average that they are. And Philly, they lose their third straight in the Battle of the Birds here. The Eagles drop to 10-4 on the season. Jalen Hurts had a mystery illness. He was listed as questionable over the weekend. He ended up playing in this particular game. But the better story is in his locker room. The better story is in the losing locker room. So that is where we will begin. The question, where does this performance, El Stinko, leave Jalen Hurts and the Eagles? Well, they can forget about winning the NFC number 1 seed, as that horse has bolted out of the barn, out on the prairie. Gone. So I've got booby trap, Elton John, and halitosis, and we will combine all of these things together, and we will make the pillars of this MALLER monologue. So to answer the question, where does this performance leave Jalen Hurts and the Eagles? This was supposed to be the flu game. This was supposed to be his flu game. Now, the rules of engagement, we've been doing this a long time. The rules of engagement, if it's your flu game, you can't go out there and projectile vomit on the field. That's not, because you don't get credit for it. You only get credit for it if you play well. And he didn't get the job done. Outside of the first drive of the game, you saw the beginning of the game here, the Eagles, the opening kickoff, they started their own 25-yard line, and they matriculated the ball down the field. An over 8 minute, 75-yard march into the end zone. And it looked like, man, the Eagles are going to win this game by 30 points. But then they had to play the rest of the game, and Hurts was a complete and total dud. Not a milk dud, a dud for the rest of the game. Now, not to overreact, because, we don't want to overreact here on sports radio. God forbid. So I don't want to overreact, but you can call me a panic peddler if you want. This was Birdhouse Inferno. Birdhouse Inferno is how we will call it for the Philadelphia. It's one thing to lose to the 49ers. They're good. You can even, if you want, excuse the Cowboys because they're half good. They're good at home. They're frauds on the road. But to go to Seattle against a reeling team with a backup quarterback, and to be outplayed by that backup quarterback for Jalen Hurts, my goodness. That's a 5-alarm fire is what that is. The defense was bad. We'll get to that in a second. There's a story there as well for Philadelphia. But the Birds have now been held under 20 points in 3 consecutive games. They've lost all 3. And as much as we enjoy the gumption of Jalen Hurts, he's a good soundbite. He's got the moxie. He's a tough hombre, Jalen Hurts, and talks the talk and all that. This is, last I checked, still ultimately a results-based industry, and the results are not there. Well, here's Jalen Hurts, the man of the hour. Here's Jalen Hurts commenting about the situation going on right now in the Eagles locker room. Here's Hurts' perspective on what's wrong in Philly. Take a listen.
We didn't execute. I don't think we were committed enough. Just got to turn it around. It's a challenge that we have to embrace and just continue to see it through.
I like the Jalen Hurts when he first came on the scene. Remember that game against the Cowboys years ago? He didn't play that well. It was only a few years ago. And he came out and said, well, when you drop a deuce, you don't go back and look. You flush it away and you move on. Right?
You take you a deuce. You don't sit there and look at it.
Yeah.
You flush it and move on.
That's right.
We're going to flush it and move on.
Yeah. The problem is, though, they keep dropping deuces everywhere. They've got a bowel problem, I think. Their bowels are a little messed up there in Philadelphia. So the path for Jalen Hurts all of a sudden has become booby-trapped. There's like a trap door opened up and he fell into a pit of vipers all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts. And you start looking back, and the Eagles were winning a bunch of games. I saw him in person against the Rams. I was not overly impressed with Philadelphia. I liked the tush-push. The rest of it I did not think was all that great. But Jalen Hurts in this moment is not worth a bucket of warm spit. Just isn't. I mean, the way he's been playing lately, he's gone from an MVP candidate, the darling who lit up the scoreboard in Arizona during the Super Bowl back in February, to another underwhelming performance. Last 3 games, the Eagles haven't gotten to 20 points, as we said. Hurts has less than 640 yards passing, no passing touchdowns for the third straight game, and a passer rating of 71. The only thing the Eagles are doing well right now is the tushy-pushy. Everything else they stink at. Shoving tush, they're good at. Everything else they're bad at. So the soul-searching app will be downloaded for Jalen Hurts and the Eagles after this performance from the App Store. Now, we mentioned the defense for Philadelphia, and how do you grade Matt Patricia? He stepped in. Little sidestep shuffle. Matt Patricia, the same guy from the Lions, the same guy from the Patriots. Matt Patricia took over as the defensive play caller. That's how bad the Eagles' defense has been. 28th in the NFL at stopping the pass. Okay, so you make the change. You pivot away from who you had before, some guy we've never heard of. You go to Matt Patricia. So how do you grade Matt Patricia's debut as the Eagles' defensive play caller? So this is rather easy. This would be in F-. We said, wait a minute, they only gave up 20 points. That's not that bad. What's wrong with you? Come on. Really? Are we really going to have this conversation? Come on. You don't need to play the Elton John classic Rocket Man to know the rocket scientist not getting the job done in this game. You just lost a game that was supposed to be a soft opening. This was supposed to be a soft opening for Matt Patricia against a crappy Seattle Seahawks team, a backup quarterback. It's like a mom-and-pop pizzeria. You open it up. You don't open it up on Friday at the lunch rush or dinner rush. You open it up on a Tuesday or a Monday when there's no one there, and so everyone knows what they're doing. And so that's what the Eagles were attempting here. It's like, okay, we'll get some confidence going. We'll play a bad Seattle team. They got some other bad teams up ahead in Philadelphia. Get that mojo back. And how did that go? Okay, don't ask. Do not ask how that went because Philly allowed. I still can't believe what I watched. And I'm happy it happened because if you watch the TV show, I had Seattle, and I looked like I was going to lose that game. But Drew Locke matriculating the ball down the field. Captain comeback. 92 yards at 1:24 on the clock, making clutch throws on third down multiple times. The Birds secondary looked punch drunk. Maybe they had a Hawaiian punch at halftime. They were punch drunk in this particular game. Matt Patricia. Now, I will say this. He had good posture. I know he's big on posture. He had good posture on the sidelines. But that defense continues to be bedraggled. And if you lose to Drew Locke, that's like 7 losses when you lose to – he's that bad. He's that bad. All right. Speaking of that, the last part of this diatribe, did Seahawks quarterback Drew Locke do enough? Did he do enough with the last-second touchdown pass in this game to give you optimism that he's got a future as a quarterback in the NFL, as a starting quarterback in the NFL? And I think much like a bad poker player, I've revealed my hand already, so you know the answer to that. The answer is no, I'm not going to be a prisoner of the moment. People going gaga. He gave some speech, some sappy cornball speech on television after the game. Good for him. But Drew Locke, for 97% of that game on Monday night, Drew Locke suffered from halitosis. He had horrific dragon breath is what he had. There was fire coming out of his mouth, and not the good kind of fire. And, man, now he did make some plays late. Congratulations. As my grandfather used to tell me when I was a kid, a broken clock is right a couple times a day. He used to brag about that. Of course, you can't really say that much anymore, I guess, because the way that everyone's pretty much looking at their phones on the clock and all that. But I guess a digital clock, as long as it keeps flashing, is right a couple times a day. Anyway, so Drew Locke barely crossed 200 yards. He did on the final drive, that final crazy 92-yard drive there at the end. So he was actually closer to 100 yards, like barely over 100 yards when that drive at the end of the game started. But this game to me was more about the Eagles than it was about Seattle. Seattle's not making the playoffs. They still have got that quarterback room has cooties because you've got Drew Locke, who I know can't play, Geno Smith, who's like a backup. So you essentially have 2 backup quarterbacks that you are doing cosplay with, pretending like they're starting quarterbacks. They're masquerading as starting quarterbacks in the NFL, playing dress-up. Fake it till you make it. It is the Ben Maller Show. If you would like to be part of this program, speakeasy rules are in effect. Sky is falling in the Delaware Valley. Where have you gone, Fats in Philadelphia? Seriously, where's Fats in Philadelphia gone? We have not heard from him in a while. But I'm guessing my friends who are Eagle fans want to fire everyone. Get rid of Nick Sirianni. Get rid of the entire bunch. In fact, do we have Nick Sirianni after the game? Listen to Nick Sirianni here, who's trying to fall on the sword in Philly. Take a listen.
Really wanted to be able to get up 2 scores on them, but obviously we weren't able to. I thought the defense was hanging in there and playing and doing some really nice things, and we just needed to pull away in that game, and we didn't. Some uncharacteristic things situationally, fundamentally, and anytime you have uncharacteristic things situation and fundamentally, that's got to go to me first. And so we all got to be critical on ourselves, me and starting with myself. And like I said, anytime it's the fundamentals or the situations that you got to look right at me for that.
All right, fire Nick Sirianni. Problem solved. There you go. We'll fire his ass. So I'm going to ask you a question here. And maybe I don't know the answer. I'm just doing the overnight show. If it happens 3 consecutive weeks in a row, unchecked, is that not out of character, or does that become your new character? Is that the epitome of what your team is now? Because we don't do the show tomorrow. Maybe the Eagles will win the rest of their games in the regular season, go on a playoff run. We do the show today. And today, as we do the show, it is a hot stew. It is a hot stew of poo, is what it is in Philadelphia.